Hi everybody, Miss Megan here with another episode of Knockout Nonfiction. Today we're going to be talking about Native Americans. Be sure to check out the video from Miss Nicole with an awesome activity to go along with this subject. And our book for today is called Wilma's Long Way Home. This is the life of Wilma Mankiller, and this book was written by Doreen Rappaport and illustrated by Linda Kukak. Full-time jobs for Cherokee people were scarce in rural Oklahoma. Wilma's family cut and peeled wood for railroad ties. They picked beans and grew strawberries, and Wilma hauled water from the spring that her family drank from and used to cool fresh milk and butter. But no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't earn enough for their family of 11. Few homes in rural Oklahoma had plumbing or electricity. Wilma's mother cooked on a wood-burning stove that also heated the houses her father built. Like rural families everywhere who could not find work, the Mankillers raised vegetables and hunted and fished to put food on the table. Wilma says it was a hard life. We were really poor. Dirt poor is how they say it in Oklahoma. Wilma's mother, Irene, was of Dutch-Irish descent. Her parents disapproved of Charlie Mankiller because he was older and native. But Wilma's parents loved each other so much that they got married anyway. Wilma's mother taught her the names of trees and flowers, and Wilma spent many days outdoors, especially when the dogwood trees were in bloom. She says, "My father must have known somehow that I would love flowers, because the name he gave me means flower." And I love this book because in the end, there is a pronunciation guide. So the word for flower in Cherokee is pronounced agiluski. Agiluski. Actually, agiluski. Agiluski. Yeah. I think that's pretty good. Wilma spent her nights reading books and playing Chinese checkers carved by her father. He was a great reader and storyteller and passed his love of both to his children. The warmth and love in our family made up for the lack of material things, she says. Wilma's family was rich in love and community. Cherokee people survived through Gadoogie, which is the philosophy of helping each other. Families who raised chickens swapped eggs for milk. People traded homegrown vegetables for store-bought goods. She says, "We were all interdependent. Do things for others rather than just for yourself." At get-togethers, the grown-ups talked and played cards. The children played hide-and-seek and kicked the can. They caught fireflies, put them in jars, watched them flash off and on, and then let them go. At the Gatillo, the ceremonial stomp dance grounds, Wilma felt part of the ancient religious songs and dances. When Wilma was almost 11, the federal government created a new policy to relocate Indians from their land to cities, promising good jobs and better housing. Wilma's father did not want to move. He remembered all the times the federal government forced Native people off their homelands. In 1838, at gunpoint, government soldiers forced Cherokee men, women, and children to leave their homelands in the Carolinas and Georgia. They were marched 1,000 miles west in the freezing winter and sweltering summer. Many were whipped along the way. Disease and starvation struck. More than 4,000 Cherokees died on this forced removal west, which Wilma's father referred to as, and I'm going to consult my pronunciation guide. All right, so the word for this is Anijaleka, Dodi Gega Tina Stana. Okay, and that means all Cherokees, they were brought on the trail. Most history books refer to this tragic event as the Trail of Tears. You may have heard of that. Wilma's father saw relocation as one more way to separate Indians from their people and to destroy their culture, but he was finding it impossible to get work in Oklahoma. Perhaps city life would give his children a better future. Wilma did not want to leave her home. She says, "I cried for days, not unlike the children who had stumbled down the Trail of Tears." Life in San Francisco, California shocked Wilma. There were no more fragrant dogwood blooms, no more flowering trees, no more hills and green valleys, only buildings close together and some people sleeping in the streets. Instead of starlit skies, glaring neon lights, no more singing wrens, only blaring sirens and car horns. Wilma says, "One day I was here and the next day I was trying to deal with the mysteries of television, indoor plumbing, neon lights, and elevators. There were no better jobs and no better housing. The family missed their friends and relatives." At school, when the teacher called the roll, Wilma's classmates laughed at her name, and she wished she could disappear. But her parents told her to be proud of her name. The family was given this name because in the early days, they guarded village homes. When enemies attacked, these warriors fought back. Wilma's classmates mocked her clothing and her Oklahoma accent. She tried to lose her accent, but she couldn't. She says, "It was not that I was so much poorer than the others, but I was definitely from another culture." Seeking community, the family went to the Indian Center in San Francisco. Her father worked to open a free health clinic for Indians. The family met other Native people who also longed to return to their homelands. All agreed this federal policy was a disaster. Wilma says it robbed us of our vitality and sense of place. She also says the hard work and fresh air were so good, the year on the farm was just what I needed. Wilma hated city life, and she kept running away to her maternal grandmother, who lived on a farm 81 miles away. Finally, her parents sent her to live there. Wilma married at 18, and within 2 years, she was the mother of 2 girls. It was the 1960s, an era of protests. Black Americans marched for equality, Latino farm workers went on strike for better wages, young and old demonstrated against war. Women met in groups to talk about their lives. Native people protested the taking of tribal lands. Quote, I began to have dreams about more freedom and independence. Wilma started college and went back to the Indian Center and shared her life with other Indians. Her husband was not pleased with her new interests and friends. She says, Hugo expected me to stop completely away from the Indian Center and from my birth family. Starting in November 1969, hundreds of indigenous people took over Alcatraz Island, a former prison in San Francisco Bay. They claimed it for Indians of all tribes. 4 of Wilma's siblings were among the occupiers. Wilma visited often and helped raise money. Reporters visited and listened and learned about the 500 years of government abuse of Native people. They wrote about the many broken treaties, and non-Native Americans were reminded that the entire country was once Indian land before it was taken away. Wilma says, it was life-changing. It was the first time I saw Native people stand up and say we will hold this island until people notice us. Before I had a lot of feelings and didn't know how to articulate them or frame them. After 19 months, government police forcibly removed the protesters, but their struggle for their rights continued. Wilma got a job at the Oakland Indian Center working with children. When she needed support or money for projects, she turned to Native people, and they always helped. She took her daughters to visit tribal communities in California. They ate traditional foods, attended traditional dances, and listened to traditional stories. She says, the militants, the wise elders, the keepers of the medicine, the storytellers were my best teachers. I felt like a newborn whose eyes have been just opened to the first light. Her path ahead became clear. Wilma separated from her husband and returned with her daughters to Oklahoma, to the familiar hills and trees and the voices of wrens and mockingbirds. She attended the sacred ceremonies and built a home on her ancestral land. She made new friends and reached out to old ones. Her father died. Her mother and 9 of her siblings moved back too. Cherokee Chief Ross Swimmer hired Wilma to work for the Cherokee Nation government. When he saw how hard she worked, he gave her more responsibility. She went back to finish college. She says, I felt whole again for the first time since my childhood. 2 years later, Wilma almost died in a car accident. Her sister Linda cared for her through 17 operations. Wilma faced many more illnesses, and each time family and friends helped her. Her brother and niece donated their kidneys to save her life. Wilma says, during the long healing process, I fell back on what elders call a Cherokee approach to life, to think positively, to take what is handed out and turn it into a better path. 18 months later, Wilma returned to work. Chief Swimmer asked her to develop new projects in rural Cherokee communities. Wilma and co-organizer Charlie Soap went to Bell, a community of 350 people. Jobs there were few. Homes were run down. Almost no houses had running water. Wilma saw that in Bell, as in her community, these Cherokee people had survived through Gadoogie by helping each other. Those who fished shared their catch. Hunters shared their meat. Young people cut wood to heat elders' homes. Wilma and Charlie believed that the Cherokee people of Bell knew best what they needed to do to better their lives. For a year, they met with them and listened to them, map out what they should do first. The Cherokee wanted running water. Wilma says, I had an abiding faith in the ability of Cherokee people to solve their own problems. Wilma applied for grants to fund the project. The community worked in teams, mapping out the route of the water line, digging trenches through flint rock and clay, and lugging pipes into ditches to be buried. Team after team, week after week, for 21 months until the pipeline brought water to 81 homes. There was no grant money for plumbing for the non-Cherokees in Bell, so their Cherokee neighbors raised it. The Cherokees of Bell began to believe that they had the power to change their lives. They repaired their homes, built 25 new houses and a community center. Wilma says the water line and the houses were more than just projects. They're symbols of renewal. This tiny community inspired others around the world to help themselves improve their lives. Chief Swimmer asked Wilma to run with him in the 1983 election. Before the Europeans came, Cherokee women and men shared political power. but European ways influenced the Cherokees and limited the political role of women. Now some Cherokees believed other tribes would laugh if a woman was elected. Wilma received hate mail, her car tires were slashed, and at first few people came to her rallies. Wilma visited people in the 7,000 square miles of the 14 counties of the Cherokee Nation. She answered their questions and told them what she believed in. Family, friends, and Charlie Soap helped her campaign. It was a tough race, but she won. She says, "In my household, no one ever said to me, 'You can't do this because you're a woman, Indian or poor.' Of course, I would not have listened to them if they had tried." Most men on the tribal council did not support her, but Wilma forged ahead, creating programs to better the economic lives of her people. In 1985, Chief Swimmer left to work in Washington, and Wilma became principal chief. 2 years later, she ran on her own and became the first woman chief of the Cherokee Nation, the second largest Indian nation in the United States. The third time she ran, she was reelected in a landslide. She says, "Prior to my election, young Cherokee girls would never have thought that they might grow up to be chief." Wilma found personal happiness too. Her work relationship with Charlie Soap had turned into love, and they married. During Wilma's, I want you to see that picture. Gorgeous. During Wilma's 10 years of leadership, the Cherokee Nation revived a tribal high school, built 4 health clinics, 2 daycare centers, and a Job Corps training center. New businesses, a cattle and poultry ranch, gift shops, and a motel were created, bringing pride to her people along with millions of dollars to better their lives. Wilma's work brought world attention to the Cherokee Nation and to Wilma, and pride to all Native peoples. Unfortunately, her many illnesses led to her early death at 64, but her vision and accomplishments remain a model of how leaders should lead and how all people can empower themselves. Wilma said, women can help turn the world right side up. We bring a more collaborative approach to government." And that is the end. And I encourage you to go online and look up some more information on Wilma Mankiller and other information on the Cherokee Nation. I was trying to find it. Oh, here it is. We do have this series of books at the library. When we open back up, I encourage you to check them out. This is a series on Native Americans, and each book focuses on a different tribal nation within the Native American culture. This one is about the Cherokees. I grabbed it because that is what we talked about with Wilma Mankiller. So I like these nonfiction books. They give some real photographs. They go a little bit more in depth. They give you some information about, like this is a traditional home that the Cherokees would live in. It was made of clay. It talks about their clothing. It's very interesting. So, yeah, check them out. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope you learned some stuff, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.